Before the sermon, I think it's fitting for me to read the poem which gives it its title, perhaps familiar to some of you. It comes from one of the great souls of American environmentalism, the poet and writer Wendell Berry, and it is entitled Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front. It begins with some uncharacteristic sarcasm. Love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay. Want more of everything ready-made. Be afraid to know your neighbors and to die. And you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery anymore. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. When you want to buy something, they will call you. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. So friends, every day do something that won't compute. Love the Lord, love the world, work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free republic for which it stands. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Praise ignorance, for what man has not encountered, he has not destroyed. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest, that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that profit. Prophesy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Listen to carrion. Put your ear close and hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world. Laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. So long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. Ask yourself, will this satisfy a woman satisfied to bear a child? Will this disturb the sleep of a woman near to giving birth? Go with your love to the fields. Lie easy in the shade. Rest your head in her lap. Swear allegiance to that which is nighest your thoughts. As soon as the generals and politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection. According to one of my early teachers in this tradition, once upon a time, 3 little girls were discussing Easter. "I'm not sure I understand it," said the first little girl. "We're Jewish, so all I know is the Passover story. We go to Grandma's house and we have a Seder that tells the whole thing. But the only time my mama talks about Easter is when she cleans out the old clothes from my closet and we take them to buy new ones at the Easter sales." "Oh, Easter is fun," said the second little girl. "At our house, that's when we wake up and go hunting around the house for Easter eggs that the bunny has hidden." Whoever finds the gold one gets the ears off the chocolate bunny in the Easter basket. And then I put on my Easter dress and we go to Mass, just like every Sunday, except that on Easter there are lilies all over and a lot more people. Now, the third little girl was a Unitarian Universalist. I think you're both missing something, she said. I go to Sunday school, and I learned that Easter is about Rabbi Jesus, who went up to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover Seder with his friends there. And what he had been teaching about God's love for the poor made some people think that they'd help get rid of the Romans who were ruling them. So the Romans arrested him, and they put him on a cross, and he died. And when he did, they buried him. And Easter is the third day, I think, when he comes out, and if he sees his shadow, there's 6 more weeks of winter. You see, no religious education program is perfect. She got most of the story right. She just had trouble with the ending. And frankly, many adults do too, especially if resurrection is taken to refer to a once upon a time event or to a preview of some coming cosmic attraction. Then it contradicts everything that we think we've learned about living and dying and nature itself. If your experience has been anything like mine, when you were a kid, you played make-believe, including Bang Bang You're Dead, before you realized how lasting death really can be, and came to terms with grief and loss. Call it practicing death, if you will. As a teenager and as a young adult, you may have noticed your peers or yourself still assuming a basic invulnerability, as though death were unreal or impossible. Starting early in life, nearly all of us, however, are at one time or another overcome by grief or fear. Entombed, as we've said in our meditations this morning, in self-protection. And still practicing dying in ways that are, well, more than make-believe and often far sadder. I think of the mental health crisis so many teenagers in our country have been through in these COVID years. And then I think it is when we need most to learn or relearn what Berry calls practicing resurrection. I think of novelist Barbara Kingsolver describing how real this human need is when she says, every one of us is called upon probably many times to start a new life. A frightening diagnosis, a marriage falling apart, a move, loss of a job or a limb or a loved one, a graduation, even bringing a new baby home. It's impossible to think at first how all of this will be possible. Eventually, what moves us all forward is the subterranean ebb and flow of being alive among the living. In my own worst seasons, she says, I've come back from the colorless world of despair by forcing myself to look hard for a long time at a single glorious thing. A flame of red geranium outside my bedroom window. And then another, my daughter in a yellow dress. And another, the perfect outline of a full dark sphere behind the crescent moon. Until I learned again how to be in love with my life again. Like a stroke victim, retraining new parts of the brain to grasp lost skills, I have taught myself joy over and over again. Notice that what she's describing, in effect, is a personal spiritual practice, one I commend to you, one I try to practice each morning. Simple joy in still being alive, As children, our parents and teachers and coaches urged us to practice the piano, to practice our math skills, our French conversation, our backhand, or our free throws. Later on, many of us began to practice a profession, or took up new sports or activities that required other forms of practice. We may even have tried daily meditation, prayer, journal writing, reflection, yoga. We may or may not quite know what we're seeking, but as a friend once remarked to me, I always say that I can live without eternal resurrection. It's daily resurrection that I'm after. Perhaps what is involved in making a life that is truly sustainable. And not only for oneself, but within the whole ebb and flow of being alive among the living. I first found that phrase in Wendell Berry's poem. But in a time when the politicos, as Berry calls them, and in the time of an ongoing war in Ukraine, and the increasing dangers to people and to our planet, perhaps what we need this Easter more than anything is to see the ability to take a longer view as part of our daily practice of resurrection. I think of how during the darkest days of World War II, the British writer J.A.R. Tolkien found the faith to write to a friend of his. I sometimes feel appalled at the thought of the sum total of human misery all over the world at the present moment. The millions parted, fretting, wasting in unprofitable days, quite apart from the torture, pain, and death, the bereavement and injustice. If anguish were visible, almost the whole of this benighted planet would be enveloped in a dense dark vapor, shrouded from the amazed vision of the heavens. And the products of it all will be mainly evil, historically considered. But the historic version is, of course, not the only one. No mortal can estimate what is really happening. Sub specie aeternitatis. All we do know, and that to a large extent by direct experience, is that evil labors with vast power and perpetual success, but in vain, preparing always the soil for the unexpected good to sprout in. During those same dark days, the German poet Peter Huchel, who had resisted the Nazis and would later defy the communists, was penning some other lines he entitled Resurrection, while confined as a prisoner of war. After this life here, we're to be awakened one day by the terrible screams of trumpets and bugles. Forgive me, Lord, but I trust that the beginning and the resurrection of us, the dead, will be announced by the crowing of a rooster. We'll lie in bed a little longer. The first ones to rise will be mother and father. We'll hear them quietly making the fire, quietly putting the kettle on, and cozily taking the coffee grinder out of the cupboard. We'll be at home again. These were souls that, like our own, had to learn to practice resurrection in times that were far more severe than those we are going through, in the face of almost unspeakable challenges. Because you see, not every spiritual practice is all that freely chosen. Sometimes it is demanded of us, or just given to us. There's a wonderful story from the Islamic poet and mystic Rumi that makes just that point. A seeker goes off on a journey. He's heard of a teacher so enlightened as to be able to bring peace to any troubled soul with just a glance. He's read the teacher's writings. He travels weeks and weeks to reach the holy man's house. When he knocks on the door, he's shocked when the holy man's stepson sticks his head out and screams, "What do you want?" He explains that he wishes to see the great teacher. But the young man just shouts insults and accusations and curses. Sneering and hooting, he hollers, "Don't you have anything better to do than to come to see an old fraud like him? He's an imposter, a parasite, a thief, who simply fleeces the naive. Go home and say your prayers there." Pilgrim says, "But I've read the teacher's writings. I believe in him, not you. Jealous words won't deter me." But he's also troubled. How can an enlightened teacher have such a wretched, angry, nasty stepson within his own home? He goes toward the town through the forest, and suddenly in the midst of his path, there appears the teacher, riding on the back of a lion. Not only has he the power over the wildest of beasts, he can also read doubt in the pilgrim's mind and speaks to his unspoken question. "You've met my difficult stepson. He came to me unchosen. It is not easy, but he has become my practice. His disdain for me has made me more patient and strong. Forced by him to make distinctions between what is true and false, what is violent and kind, what is a distraction, and what is truly important. It is in that that I have found my spiritual power and my new life." Now, I don't mean to suggest that any of us should overfunction to tolerate intolerable behavior. But rarely, it seems to me, do we get to choose all of the challenges of our lives willingly. More often, rather than blotting out our own needs and using all of the defenses that life provides, bitterness, blame, resentment, depression, addiction, distraction, television, shopping, false comfort, I think we need all through life to learn to die to an older, more fearful self, perhaps unwillingly, and then rise to a new and enlarged life. And sometimes we're going to have to learn how to do so more consciously, more deliberately, practicing resurrection. And perhaps that is why this day called Easter is such a powerful reminder. The late writer Nancy Mears, who published with our own Beacon Press a book called Waist High in the World, told about gradually becoming confined to her wheelchair, as my own mother did. But she begins the book with the telling sentence, "I choose joy." "Do you have to do that every morning?" someone asked her. "No," she replied, "every hour, every moment." Friends, we practice resurrection when we truly notice beauty, not only in the world, but in one another. When we are truly grateful, when we swallow our anger and our pride, and when we start over with living more as we were meant to live. When we ask for forgiveness or forgive someone else. When we lift up the love that's been buried inside us. When we say no to the forces of death in our world, using spiritual courage, and say yes to everything that enhances life for ourselves and those around us, turning gratitude into responsibility, and responding to life by opening ourselves, often through unconscious and unchosen spiritual practices, toward a real, growing soul, living a new and larger life. Let not Easter come to earth, O God, and not come to our souls. Teach us to practice resurrection this day and all the days of our lives. Amen.